tech issues right now, but I think what we could do is I could move forward with just some updates and logistics for the day while we're waiting for her to join.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that then, Katie. The executive director's report, or are you just going to fill us in on some other stuff?
Yeah, I'll just give you the report and then walk through the logistics of today, and then we can circle back and approve the agenda once the chair is back on, assuming that she joins us again. So good afternoon, board members and members of the public. Thanks so much for being here today, and thanks for your patience with the online logistics. You know, I have just been struck that even, you know, a couple of years into this virtual meeting process, we always still get surprises. So hopefully one day we'll be back all together. So a couple announcements this morning, and then I just want to talk you through what we have on deck for today. First of all, I wanted to forecast ahead to the March meeting and let you all know about what to expect in March. So our March meeting is going to be a little bit different. It's rather than a business meeting of the Environmental Quality Board, it's going to be a joint event of the EQB and the Climate Change Subcabinet. And this event is to hear an update on Minnesota's Climate Action Framework. This is a draft document that the Climate Change Subcabinet put out earlier this month. And the March meeting is going to be an opportunity for us to hear more about this Climate Action Framework. Basically, the framework lays a groundwork for the future of climate action in the state. And we've put it out in draft format and are hoping to get input from Minnesotans over the course of the spring to help shape the final version of this framework. So the March discussion is going to be kind of orienting the public to what's in that framework, why did we put it forward now, what are we hoping to do with it, and then how Minnesotans can get involved. There will also be time during the meeting for Minnesotans to share their thoughts to members of the EQB and the Climate Change Subcabinet. So we're very excited about that meeting. I think my team will put a link in the chat to the action framework itself that's online, and so folks can go ahead and look at that in advance of the meeting if you're interested. So that'll be in March. Okay, let me circle back and just walk through what we're hoping to do today. I do see that Chair Anderson-Kelleher looks like she's here. I'll pause to see if Chair Anderson-Kelleher can hear us. Madam Chair, are you able to hear us? It looks like she's not. So oh.
I'm back. I have no idea what weird world that was. And sorry, I'm in between cameras, but I don't know where we are on the agenda.
You're fine. We're rolling with it. We have to be flexible in this virtual day and age. So I just gave a quick update, Madam Chair, but I think we can move forward now with approval of the consent agenda, and then I can walk the board through the logistics for the day.
Wonderful. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda today.
Chair Anderson-Kelleher, this is Katrina. I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Kessler. A second, please.
Jerry Van Amberg, I'll give a second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Van Amberg. All right, all those in favor, just unmute for a second and we'll do a quick voice vote. Can you hear me still? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no. The motion prevails. The consent agenda is adopted. All right, thank you. And I think Executive Director Pratt, are you back up then?
Yeah, I'll walk the board and the public through what we have on deck for our meeting today. I'm really excited about this meeting, and there's a lot of fun things to talk to you about today. First up, we're going to hear a quick update from the Subcommittee for Pilot Program Implementation, SPPI. So Board Member Martin and EQB Staff Member Denise Wilson will update you all on what's been happening on that end. The second agenda item, I'm very pleased that Freshwater Society which is a organization that works on water. They're joining us today to give us a presentation on a proposal to advance and shape the goals of the 2020 State Water Plan. So I'll give a little bit more context before that agenda item, but very pleased to have them here with us today. And then third, we will be looking at the biennial work plan for the EQB. This was brought forward in last fall as draft format, and I'm asking the board to today look to adopt that work plan, and I'll be walking you all through a presentation, and we'll have time for discussion on that item as well. And then after those agenda items, there'll be time to hear public comment and hear reflections from members of the public about the work items that we've talked about today. So a few logistics of the meeting. Board members, just as a reminder, when we do have those discussion periods, please turn your camera on so that we can be in communication with one another. Please state your name so that we can tell who's who, and that helps the public follow along as well. Members of the public, there'll be an opportunity, as I said, towards the end of the meeting to offer public comment today. And maybe my team can, pull up the slide to just remind you all of the logistics. So the way, if you are interested in giving public comment, please use the raise hand feature in WebEx, and I'll show you where that is in a second. That'll indicate you wish to make public comment. And then during that public comment period, you'll be prompted to speak, and we'll unmute you. And members of the public, please remember to always introduce yourself before you give your comment. And to find the raise hand button, it can be kind of tricky to find in WebEx, but you're going to turn on the participants list in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You're going to find your name, and then there'll be a little hand that you can toggle on to indicate you would like to give public comment. And we'll review these instructions as we get closer. So there's also in your packet, there's a number. If you have any technical difficulties, you can reach us by phone or email during the meeting. Okay, and Chair Anderson Kelleher, I'll turn it back to you to kind of open up the first item.
All right, I think I'm successfully off mute and I can actually hear all of you, which is good, and see some of you, which is terrific. So we're first going to have this update on the subcommittee for the pilot program implementation, and I believe that board member Nick Martin is going to lead off. Or is Denise going to do the presentation?
Nick will start it off, and then he'll pass it over to Denise.
Wonderful. All right.
All right, thanks very much, Chair Anderson Kelleher. As just a quick reminder, in January we had a joint EQB ERIS subcommittee meeting.
Your microphone seems to be a little. Can you get closer to it, or?
I can try. How's my audio now?
Keep talking. That would help.
Okay. Just starting off with a review of what we had in January. Can you hear me okay?
It's not great.
See if there's something I can do about it. Sorry.
Yeah. Do you have a headset?
Yes.
Try that. I actually think your headset might have been on already.
Can you hear me any better now?
Slightly better. Keep going.
Sorry about that. Well, I will just be pretty brief and then hand off to Denise then. We talked in January at the joint EQB ERIS meeting about the progress of the pilot program so far, how we have launched a pilot program as of January and running all the way through September that will be testing the draft revised EAW form that contains climate information and working directly with RGUs, project proposers, consultants, and the public to really do test of those new questions on the form. We talked about both the pilot program design itself, which was the result of one of our meetings last year. Just sort of the recruitment strategy to make sure that we've got broad representation from all across Minnesota, and representation from all of those different parties that use the EAW form. And then we talked about the design of metrics. The goal of the pilot program is to think about effectiveness and efficiency, and the subcommittee, along with EQB staff, have designed a number of metrics to look at each of those: the effectiveness of the climate information, the efficiency getting that information, the sort of success of the overall program in getting a broad cross-section of representation and participation in the pilot program. All of that is pretty well outlined in a memo from the Subcommittee on Pilot Program Implementation that was included in the January packet. Since then, the staff have begun implementing that framework. We have had further conversations with the staff, kind of refining some of the survey questions to start getting at those metrics for effectiveness and efficiency. I'm going to hand off here to Denise Wilson, the EQB lead for this project, and she'll share some updates with you both about how recruitment is going, who's participating in the project, and then upcoming engagement opportunities, a number of different ways that people can participate in the project, as well as some of the information on metrics and survey questions that we've now put together. So Denise, I'll hand off to you.
Thank you, Board Member Martin. So good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the audience, my name is Denise Wilson, and I am the Director of the Environmental Review Program. Since the pilot program began in January, we have not received any environmental assessment worksheets using the new form. However, I have spoken with several state and local governmental units that indicated that they have projects underway that are using the draft revised form, so we should be seeing them soon. When we publish environmental assessment worksheet notifications in the EQB monitor, projects reviewed using the draft revised form will be noted with a star before the project title. So we'll be able to distinguish between those projects that are going through the pilot program and projects who have elected to continue using the existing approved form. Next slide, please. Since December, EQB staff have been actively recruiting state and local governmental units around the state to register and participate in the pilot program. We posted weekly messages to the EQB monitor, sent Gov delivery emails to local governmental units and consultants that submitted environmental assessment worksheets in the last 2 years, and made over 100 direct follow-up phone calls to those local governmental units. We also sent email messages through the Green Step Cities program and to local government associations. And we provided opportunities to register for the pilot program and information about the pilot program on the EQB website. Next slide. Currently, we have 85 individuals registered for the pilot program from 24 unique local units of government, including cities, counties, and watershed districts around the state, and 7 state agencies, as well as staff from 27 different consulting firms. Next slide, please. As part of the pilot program implementation framework, EQB staff will be hosting a monthly speaker session that will be open to the public, where attendees can learn and be supported as projects go through the process. The first speaker session is scheduled for February 24th. Allison Sirakos, an environmental scientist, and Rachel Shutka, senior environmental specialist from Bar Engineering, will discuss some example greenhouse gas calculations and how they use the guidance developed for the draft revised environmental assessment worksheet form. The second speaker session is scheduled for March 24th and will provide an overview on the Minnesota Infrastructure Carbon Estimator. This tool is primarily used for calculating greenhouse gas emissions from transportation projects. The third speaker session is scheduled for April 28th, where Amelia Voss, regulatory attorney from the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, will discuss how communities use and understand environmental review information. More details about this session will be coming soon. From there, we will use an adaptive approach and consider topics and speakers suggested by participants. Next slide, please. The pilot program framework also includes a separate cohort meeting specifically for registered governmental units and consultants, and is scheduled to take place directly after the speaker session. The meeting will include time for speakers from the previous speaker session to respond to more technical questions, an open space for general questions and dialogue, and time for attendees to discuss needs for future topics and speakers. Next slide, please. Information on the pilot program will be regularly updated on the EQB webpage. In addition, the webpage includes opportunities to stay informed by joining an email distribution list and opportunities to sign up to receive notifications via the EQB Monitor newsletter and watch for projects that are being reviewed using the draft revised EAW form. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time. Here's my contact information if anyone has questions about the pilot program after the meeting today. That concludes my update.
Thanks, Denise. I think I'm just handing back to Chair Anderson Kelleher at this point, unless there are questions on this part, Katie.
We do have, I'm just double checking here. We do have time for a couple questions if there are any. Not, oh, there's.
See Board Member Van Amberg's hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask Denise, what do you have a broad range of projects you feel are pretty good at this point? Different kinds of projects that would be involved?
Oh, Madam Chair, members of the board, Board Member Van Amberg, I think we can anticipate a diverse group of projects. You know, there are differences in project types and how those RGUs are assigned to different project types. And so, as I mentioned, I've spoken with several state agencies who have projects underway, and those will vary from the types of projects that are reviewed from the local units of government. And we have several projects underway, folks reaching out and asking questions as they go through the process. So the answer is yes, I suspect we will have a diverse group of project types and a diverse group of interest through the types of RGUs that will be using the form.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I'll just pause for a second. All right. Well, thank you to both Board Member Nick Martin for chairing the pilot project and your introductory comments, and for Denise's presentation today. And I think next we're going to move on to the potential collaboration with the Freshwater Society. And I think Director Pratt would like to introduce this item further.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Anderson Kelleher and members of the board. I just wanted to give a little bit of context for this presentation. So just taking you back and refreshing your memory about the 2020 State Water Plan, which the board approved back in September of 2020. And as you recall, that plan addresses sustainable water management in Minnesota in the context of climate change. It outlines 5 goals and numerous strategies and actions that Minnesota should be working on to protect and improve our waters in the coming decade, given the risks that we see with climate change. So last fall in October, EQB worked with interagency staff to come back to the board and provide an update during that first year since the plan was published, what are some of the highlights? Where have we made progress? And we were able to share that a number of agencies are advancing initiatives and projects that advance the goals in the water plan. And that was very encouraging. But something we also heard, and we know broadly about the water plan, is that it's going to take more than the state to get to our goals and to make progress in the coming decade. And we need to expand our partnership. We need to reach more different types of Minnesotans to work collaboratively on the goals in the water plan. So we can't do it alone. So I'm very pleased that today Freshwater Society is here with us to discuss a proposal for expanding engagement around the water plan that would advance action and also help shape community leadership and shape the goals that are in the water plan. So take it to the next step. Freshwater Society approached me and my team some time back, and we've been kicking around ideas and kind of brainstorming how this might work. And so I'm very excited that they have thought about this quite a bit and have a proposal to discuss with you today. So I will turn it to them. After they present, board members, there'll be time for conversation and discussion. With that, I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Executive Director Pratt, and greetings to you, Chair Anderson Kelleher, and all board members. Thank you for inviting us today, and I greatly appreciate this opportunity. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Freshwater and our mission, which you see it right there on the first slide, is to inspire and empower people to value and protect our freshwater resources. Having worked inside government my entire career prior to coming to Freshwater in 2019, I worked on numerous state water plans, and the Executive Director Pratt's remarks were right on that it's important for state agencies and the Environmental Quality Board to have leadership in planning for the future of our most valuable natural resource in the state, in our opinion, our freshwater resources. Engaging people in new and in interesting ways is something we're keenly interested in accomplishing our mission at Freshwater. So I'd like to introduce the rest of my team that are here today. Jen Cater is our Director for Engagement and Systems Change. Jocelyn Leung is our Participatory Engagement Coordinator, and Olivia Forche is an intern who's working with us. And as the Executive Director Pratt mentioned, we have put together some ideas that we're currently shopping around to philanthropic organizations that I'm going to now hand it over to Jocelyn to present to you, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, and members of the public. My name is Jocelyn. My pronouns are she, her. I want to be very honest, I'm a little nervous, and I've only started working on water since October of 2020. So I have a master's of public health, and my background is primarily social determinants of health with a special interest on how they intersect and relate to mental health. So next slide, please. So our proposed project is to increase community leadership from rural and BIPOC communities by bringing them in to revise and adapt the 2020 State Water Plan alongside state and local government staff. For Freshwater Society, other than having some questions on how these high-level strategies that we find in the plan could work for so many different communities, we were really interested because we believe it is a good and strong plan. We're excited about how thorough you were in investigating how climate change worsens surface water, groundwater, agriculture, and habitat issues. These are topics that we work with every day. And we really love the honest acknowledgement that rural and BIPOC populations will face the first and worst consequences as seen in the yellow box. And that light yellow box shows there's a variety of reasons why this is happening. We've got wealth gaps between race and ethnicities and urban and rural communities. And then we just have communities that depend more than others on reliable weather and clean water, whether it is for food, for cultural survival, for livelihoods, or for being on healthy lands and waters that protect mental health. And then for me personally, I just love the inclusion of mental health. Spring of 2021, I actually went and read 15 state level climate change plans. I could only find one, which was the Oregon's 2017 Climate and Health Resilience Plan that mentioned mental health and mentioned it in terms of trauma-informed approaches. I argue that while increasing mental health supports for people already in trouble is necessary, it's really important to address mental health by going upstream, just talking about what has always stressed folks out before climate change, whether that be racism or unpredictable markets for farmers, talking about how climate change's unique stressors, the increased precipitation, the warming temperatures, they impact differently in terms of different at-risk populations. And then talking about the scarcity of culturally responsive mental health treatments and supports that can speak to the added challenges of climate change for white farmers, for rural families, and BIPOC or communities of color. So there's a whole pathway and opportunities for interventions and strategies. Next slide, please. So in the next 2 slides, we just want to lay out the argument of why we see increased community leadership making this plan easier to carry out in all parts of Minnesota and thus more successful. First is just recognizing how place-specific the goals and strategies in this plan are. You know, I forgot, I'm from New Jersey, but people keep telling me in Minnesota weather changes every hour or half an hour. But for me, like even towns next to each other, they're facing very different weather conditions and climate change impacts. And then another aspect is that of this place space is just recognizing that each area has a different history of populations who are economically safe, who are even safe when 50-year storms are becoming more common, or whose neighborhood has a good tax base to update infrastructure. And then just the political histories too, that's very place specific. Who is regularly involved in policy decisions and resource allocations? Next slide, please. Another benefit is more community partners could end up helping government staff in carrying out these strategies. Just looking at the list of strategies, I think very few of them could rely 100% on government or would succeed without changed behaviors from producers, renters, landowners, and communities. And just the benefit of including communities that face greater than usual climate change risk or have an unusually high role to play. Just that lived knowledge really helps adapt the plans to many different local conditions. Because most of us who don't live with those issues every day, we might miss some of the nuances and some of the unique barriers. So just having more communities will tell you how to tailor a single strategy to different parts of Minnesota so that many more communities can carry it out. And then the importance of including more at-risk communities just to ensure that resource allocations are equitable. You know, if rural and BIPOC communities have faced political barriers in previous policy decisions, they might need the most help because they've been passed over before. And finally, people are invested if they're also involved in the planning. So just communities seeing their ideas reflected in the plan, proud of the plan, able to get other people excited about the plan, and working with government partners on demonstration projects and negotiating strategies. We know these are not easy things, but these all help build confidence and optimism in future collaboration needed for implementation. Next slide, please. So high level, what our proposed project adds to this plan is the ability to bring community leadership of rural and BIPOC populations into every part of the plan. Working goal by goal, community organizations, Native nations, and local and state governments will look over the current list of strategies, see which ones need to be revised to better reflect local conditions, see what strategies might have been missed because there weren't communities in that part of the conversation before, and see which strategies might need to be deleted because there might be an existing strategy is a symptom of a problem and that could be replaced by a strategy that addresses the root cause better. Like what we went over last slide, this revised list of strategies might benefit from communities' insight, and I love saying creative solutions just from dealing with a situation every single day, and local and geographic relevance, knowing what works on the ground versus in theory, knowing what exact types of technical assistance or funding might be needed to address strategies barriers. We want all communities, Native nations to not just rework the existing plan, but we also want for each region, and I'll elaborate this later, to pilot test one idea that community members have just suggested from all the outreach that's going to be done. And communities, Native nations, and governments all work together on this demonstration project. If successful, this demonstration projects in each region might give us new ideas and new strategies to put into the plan. We want these to be manageable. So small projects, 2 to 3 months, around $10,000 budget, because we know capacity is an issue. And there's a lot of work in this proposed project. Next slide, please. So I do want to say, when we submitted an application to the Bush Foundation's Community Innovation Grant mid-January to fund this work, that application did require us to think through some fairly concrete steps. So this looks like it's very baked through, but I want to emphasize that this is a proposed project. Nothing is set in stone other than community organizations we talk to are expecting a similar level of involvement and leadership for them. So what we're planning to do, I'm just going to walk through one series of meetings, and this is going to go 5 times for the 5 goals, is that this whole set of meetings takes about 2 to 3 months. So the first meeting over Zoom is statewide. The Environmental Quality Board and Freshwater explains the goal and each strategy. And this puts the work on us and having a question and answer to clear up any questions that community members who are newer to this project might need. So everyone leaves the room knowledgeable. And then secondly, creating breakout rooms to brainstorm. So we have 2 rounds of breakout groups that we're proposing. The first round is government and community partners to talk to folks in different regions from them, just helping the potential for future between regions collaboration. And then in the second round, with communities and government partners in their own region, really sit through and think, okay, what is existing studies and research that we might not have considered that would be really useful to figure out this goal and the strategies and if they make sense? What communities would be most impacted by this goal that we need to reach out to? So that's basically what that first meeting is there for. And it's really setting up for success for community organization between meetings for like that 1 month to go and reach out to their community members through different outreach strategies like surveys, focus groups, mapping evaluation techniques, other techniques they know that work for them. We know that, community organizations, I'm not so worried about Native nations, but they may be new to all of these goals or at least one of these goals. So we're actually asking to bring on a water policy consultant, the Hispanic Advocacy Community Empowerment through Research, also known as ASER, and the Freshwater team to really help people form questions or discussion points around the goals and strategies before they go and talk to their community members. And we can guide those who are new to collecting data to be able to figure out how to do survey questions, a focus group, and be another resource for them to check these questions and see if they work. Most importantly, we want to help community organizations and Native nations analyze their input, notes from focus groups, survey responses, etc. Last thing we want is any community organization to analyze 77 responses on their own. And this is going to be really helpful because we can help them see how the inputs that they've received from this data collecting really can be used to revise or add new strategies that are relevant to the goal. And this really puts them in a good place to talk to government partners and other community organizations in meeting number 2, which I'm going to go over it later, but we're proposing to split Minnesota into 5 regions. So within each region in meeting 2, local governments, community organizations, and Native nations, they share what they've learned over the month. They all work together to come up with a shared list of strategy that works for the whole region and recognizes all constituents and communities that folks are representing. And they can also use this meeting to work on demonstration projects, including identifying projects and potential ideas or logistics. And this would set us in a good place for meeting number 3 over Zoom, which is again state level, because all the regions meet together for a conversation with local governments and state agencies. There's working to merge each region's suggestion into one new list of state level strategies that really balances out the new needs and revisions from communities and Native nations, and also have state and local governments there to make sure that those needs and that whole list can be carried out by everyone in the room. So the outcome of these 3 meetings is to have a new list of state strategies, and we can see how those strategies can be adapted to different regions, meaning even though there's the same core components, maybe each region has it numbered a little differently because it's a larger agriculture area is going to be very different from a more city area. Or some of that language is modified to reflect the unique geology of the area, et cetera, et cetera. So we repeat this 5 times for the 5 goals. And in terms of demonstration projects, we're really going to leave it to the group to decide how they're going to time their demonstration projects. It could be after you finish all the goals, or we can order the goals in a way where you can do demonstration projects in the middle of this process. I'm going to help them evaluate the success, and then we're going to all figure out how to reincorporate successful demonstration projects into the planned strategy. Freshwater staff will be facilitating conversations at the regional meeting if needed to just make sure that everything is thought through. The reason why we are asking for 1.5 years instead of 15 months for anybody who's really good at math, which is 5 goals times 3 months, is we learned the hard way from One Watershed, One Plan efforts that really passionate people might need an extra meeting after meeting 3 just to decide what the final list of strategies are. And we also want to build some time for demonstration projects to develop. We understand there's holiday seasons. We're not going to be always clockwork and finishing all of the goals. So we're just walking that balance of finding an acceptable amount of time to give us breathing room and to not burn everyone out, and also be able to finish in a timely manner, knowing that this is a 2020 to 2030 plan. Next slide, please. Ooh, I need to swallow. So this slide goes over the different regions. We're still thinking exactly where the demarcations will be, but we know roughly we're subdividing Minnesota into a Northeast region, a Metro region, a Southeast region, a Southwest region, and a Northwest region. And within each region, we're hoping for the following to join: interested staff from state agencies that work in that region and might, be good to have a conversation while the region is having a discussion. And that's really from working in One Watershed, One Plan efforts, where we've seen it really helpful for MDH staff working on that region to join the drinking and groundwater discussion. We're going to recruit local government staff like County and SWCDs, Native Nations, community organizations, mostly representing rural BIPOC populations. There are going to be some organizations that are white, but they have subject matter expertise like stormwater and experience working with BIPOC communities. Metro Blooms is a good example of that. One group that's kind of missing here is the list of executive directors from the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, RSDP, which is a part of the University of Minnesota Extension. And they work in different regions too, like Central, Northeast, Northwest. They're basically a board of community members and organizations that work with university faculty on sustainable agriculture and clean energy projects. We want these executive directors to sit in all these meetings because they have the capacity to reach out to other community organizations who just might not have the time and staff to join this project. And we're really hoping that with RSDPs and organizations like Metro Blooms that's bridging that expertise with working with communities, they will make it a more welcoming experience for community organizations who are newer to water and environmental jargon. Like when I was really brand new to working in water, I appreciated being able to make a point and then having someone else in the room with more expertise flesh it out so that my point will be more fully considered. So trying to find a similar situation. Next slide, please. After talking to Bush Foundation staff, we were encouraged to find rural and BIPOC communities who would join in this grant proposal. And so Olivia and I, who's on this call, took over 2 months to talk to 38 organizations, both potential community partners and government or foundation staff who could connect us to communities. We ended up with 16 organizations and 1 Native Nations of the 25 in total that we want to bring in. So we're leaving some room for more Native Nations and organizations, particularly in that South Central area, should we secure funding. You can see that these come from all over the state. They represent communities from different racial and ethnic groups. So for those living in urban areas, BIPOC interested in urban farming or living in areas of higher impervious services, in rural areas, BIPOC farmers and also BIPOC farm workers. We have some representation in the Southwest where we know Hispanic Latin communities often live on floodplain areas too. And then Native community organizations and Red Lake Nation. We're also in talks with Fond du Lac and Prairie Island Indian community. We also have populations with lower incomes, white farming and rural communities, immigrant and refugee communities, private well users, neighborhoods that face historic disinvestment or smaller tax bases, among others. And then many of the community organizations come in with considerable expertise from their ongoing work. And you can see that in that lower box where you see a lot of regenerative farming organizations, wildlife, plants, forestry, including from a forager's perspectives, private wells, stormwater management, mental health for both white farmers and BIPOC populations. We're actually asking for additional mental health practitioners like Dr. Brenda Mack and Dr. Leah Pressure to join and give trainings on mental health literacy and other expertise. Next slide, please. So I was trained to be an evaluator. So for all the evaluators out there, you can see this is the 3 boxes to the right. That's a logic model, but I like the way it's framed. And this is something we did for Bush Foundation, other foundations. It shows that there's implications for this project 5 years from when it ended and 10 years from when it ended and future water plans. So the first line is basically showing how the increased number of organizations participating in climate change, water, and environmental policy making these conversations is going to lead in the short term to those community-based organizations feeling more comfortable in the spheres. And that is then going to translate long-term into actions of taking on more of this work and becoming leaders sought out for other water and environmental projects, much like how Native nations are seeing currently. I estimated conservatively that about 12 of the 17 would be completely new to working on a state level water or environmental policy making process. The second group of arrows show increased collaboration on this project can lead to change mindsets and build trust, which over time leads to expanded networks for community and government partners. The third group of arrows talk to the changes in the plan, including the new list of strategies that are ready for implementation because they include local conditions and they reflect more diverse communities' needs. And these lead to strategies being carried out that are better at equitably advancing climate resilience and in the long term, better outcomes. The fourth group is with demonstration projects. So not only do we want the opportunities for communities to pilot test new ideas that can be new strategies for the plan, we want each region to be able to grow that demonstration project into a more permanent program. So within our grant budget is 2 years of funding to hire a staff to develop this project into a program, which is because staffing is probably the most expensive cost, and we want to see if we can take care of it. Finally, hanging out by itself in the right bottom corner is just the outcome of impacting future water plans. If this is successful, it will be easier to bring in communities to talk about strategies implementation early for the next state water plan, and the one after that, and the one after that. Next slide, please. So I know this is kind of scary, but the Bush Foundation asked us to be ambitious, and they also asked us to put together a proposed budget. And as we talk to community partners, we really try to find numbers that were going to fit their capacity. I do want to reiterate that this is a proposal, so we are flexible with the amounts, is that maybe for community partners. I'm just going to go a little bit over the bold, and you can always come back to this if you have more questions. So some of the things that stick out to me is that we started asking if $20,000 per year staff time for each community organization and Native Nation would be enough. And we were told no, because they need to hire a part-time staff or train an intern to do the work. And that's the reason why that amount was raised to $45,000 per year for staff time. And for our community partners, we're thinking about 1.5 years funding for this project. For Freshwater Society, we are requesting for 2 years with a water policy consultant. We need 3 months before community partners are involved to find the rest of the government partners and the cohort to work with us there. Who's also analyzing 15 organizations' data to create guides for community organizations on how to write questions for each goal, figuring out how meetings run, setting trainings up for interested government partners like authentic community engagement with Voices for Racial Justice, which we had a conversation with, or for interested community organizations, some of our facilitation methods. And then after the meetings and demonstrations are done after that 1.5 years, Freshwater needs 3 months to document the different demonstration projects, including how other communities could adopt or adapt them, the reasoning behind the process and strategies to make it easier for EQB to defend the final list of strategies to state leadership, evaluation and reporting to foundations, and really building out a plan for earlier involvement of communities in the next state water plan. I also want to call to attention that a significant part of that budget is finding those 2 years of staff funding for the regions to grow their demonstration projects into more regular programming. We figure $65,000 per year salary would be competitive to start with. If we are successful in finding this funding, we will work with the regions to decide what makes sense for each region for the staff to be housed, whether it's a local government, a community organization, Native Nation, or other entity. The goal is just to help that program be successful for the whole region. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, we expect to hear back from Bush Foundation by mid-March. We submitted in mid-January. Pursue also exploring other funding opportunities. McKnight, and we're drafting a letter of interest to Kellogg Foundation. Actually, Olivia is on the call doing that. If we secure at least part of our funding for Bush Foundation, we can start our conversation with your staff and local government partners. We can finish finding all the community partners and Native nations. And then all the steps I outlined before will be ready to get us to a start date of around June 2022-ish to start the meetings and demonstration projects for 1.5 years. Next slide, please. So I am going to throw it back to Link after I'm done with this part, but I just want to say, now that you've heard our proposed project, we're very interested in hearing from you. We have some questions laid out. Do you think we're on the right track? how do you see us partnering to make this successful? So I know I made some suggestions, but feel free to expand or revise what I've said as needed. And then what opportunities are there to work together to bring this forward?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say, Jocelyn, I heard you say you were nervous. You did a great job presenting. This was a very, very thorough presentation. I think we are wowed by your presentation skills, actually. So, yes.
Here.
And Commissioner Linkstein, it's good to see you again. I think that what we'll do here, I'm going to let, if you'd like to say a couple of words, and then we will run up until 2:10 on this topic, because we'd like to have a little bit of feedback from board members on this proposed plan. So
Great. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Madam Chair. And it's wonderful to see so many of my former colleagues together again, still doing the good work of the Environmental Quality Board. So kudos to you all for persisting. And one obvious question I think that people might want to ask that I'll just put on the table and speak to it a little bit is why Freshwater would take this on? Why not someone else? One of the things that we've learned at Freshwater is we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that focuses on our freshwater resources. We've been doing this work since about 1970 plus or minus. We have learned that sometimes the efforts of engaging communities is helped along by outreach that happens from others than state government. And so we feel like our role as Freshwater in a nonprofit capacity could really be a fantastic bridge builder to engage communities in ways that feel safer to them, to be convened by an organization that is not an engineering firm, a consulting firm, or a unit of state government. And so the conversations start in a safer space, but can grow into really meaningful, engaged conversations. We've been doing this work in cooperation with the Board of Water and Soil Resources as part of the One Watershed, One Plan process. And we find that we get some really wonderful participatory engagement from others in the communities when we do that work. So that's one thing, just why us and why a nonprofit partner. We think it extends the work of the Environmental Quality Board in a very effective way. With that, we just love to answer any questions that members have.
Great. So we'll take questions and observations. I'm going to just lead off and say that I think it absolutely makes sense to. Sometimes I think we forget how small the staff is at EQB. They're small and mighty. And so being able to extend the reach, especially with this type of extensive public engagement, I think is really a wise thing. So Commissioner Stroman, I see that your hand is up and I'm going to call on you first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just will build on what you said to express my support for this project and appreciation for Freshwater for bringing this forward. I will say what Executive Director Linkstein was just saying about extending the reach of government, and sometimes that government is not the best entity to convene these kinds of conversations is something, you know, we've been trying to be really more thoughtful about at DNR and be more strategic about when are the times for our voice as a state agency to lead and when is a time for us to facilitate the creation of space for other voices to lead. And I think that this is an excellent opportunity where the role of the EQB in developing the plan and having that plan available for the state of Minnesota was a great role for government to play. And I think now for an NGO like Freshwater to come in and convene other community organizations whose voices can add here is a really good use of that plan and a good use of the role of non-government entities as well as government entities. So I think this is a model of that kind of partnership to expand reach and us strategically using our roles and our respective strengths. So I think this is great.
Thank you for that. Other members. I am, yes, Commissioner Kessler.
Thanks. Once a month, I forget how to raise my hand in this platform, and
It's okay, but it worked. It was like a
Commissioner
distress signal.
Stroman to remind me. I'll just echo Chair Anderson Kelleher's praise for the presentation, the thoughtful delivery, and the clear, concise idea and the way that you've conveyed it. And to build on what I think Commissioner Stroman said, I am 100% in agreement that we can't do this all at the state level, whether or not you count just the people who worked at EQB or all of those us in this virtual room who work at the state level, and that the only way we're going to make true progress and meaningfully get others to buy in is if we start talking differently with different people. And we certainly know that we have room for improvement there, and others can do that better. And let's play to their strengths, including the folks here today. I'll also just applaud you for not just thinking about strategies, but demonstration projects, because I think if we think into the future, it's one thing to tell people who are funders maybe of the next iteration of this, oh, we have these ideas and they reflect all these diverse perspectives and we think we have buy-in, but it's a whole other thing to say, we have this set of ideas and we tried some things. And these are the things we learned. And now we want to try more things. And we're asking you for additional funding to help us build on these pilot projects. So I'm very intrigued about the demonstration projects. And I think there's natural evolution from the water plan and other plans that exist that fit into that bucket. So again, thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Kessler. Board Member Nelson, who did figure out how to raise his hand on a WebEx, let me just say, in his first meeting. So I think we should be giving out great gold stars on that.
Madam Chair, I can be taught. So just a few quick comments. One disclosure, I have an ongoing sort of passive relationship with the Freshwater Society in terms of a number of years ago, wrote a book with a couple other people. They're the ones that have it on their website for downloading. There's no financial relationship there, but it continues to be on their website and was something we worked together on. I do appreciate the kind of broadening the audience or the players that this proposal brings forth. In our book, we do talk about building enduring partnerships and broadening that and local relevance. And so those sort of things that resonated with me. I will say one thing that I would ask you to think about a little bit more. I'm not sure you're local enough yet. Having spent many years at the county level, I can tell you, and the second smallest county in the state, the issues were different from one end of the county to the other, let alone regions. So that's one thing to think about as you go forward from my perspective. And thank you.
Okay, awesome. And now we're going to see if you can now put your hand down, which is also a feat on these meetings to figure out. So I'm going to call on Board Member Forsberg. Board Member Forsberg, you are still muted. So if you are speaking, we cannot hear you right now.
I should be both unmuted and visible at this point. And it's good to see John. I have fond memories of serving with you on the board earlier, John.
Good to see you too, Al. Thank you.
And I appreciate your comment about creating a safe space rather than coming through a regulatory agency and having this fear in the back of your mind that this is going to come back and bite me if I'm too open about things. And the comment too about instead of just planning, we need some concrete results. I've been to many meetings with the public where they say, we don't need another study. We want to see something happen. So I think we need the combination of those two things. A couple of questions I had is you went through the presentation. I see a lot of water issues. I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, individual septic systems and community wastewater systems, which are very expensive. You know, millions and millions have been invested in them. They have a big influence on water quality. Should that be considered also? And then to show my real ignorance, I don't know what BIPOC stands for.
So I'll take the first question, then Jocelyn, why don't you take the BIPOC question? But Board Member Forsberg, one of the things we did is just in speaking with organizations around the state, as Jocelyn noted, we interviewed a good number, more than 20 organizations around the state. We were listening for their interests, and what you see reflected in our presentation are the things we heard from them. But we're open to additional ideas and additional interests. So thank you for the comment about individual septic systems. That's an important issue. You're right. If it becomes important with our partners, then I think we'll be listening for that in future conversations. And Jocelyn, you should just answer the second one on BIPOC populations.
Sure, we can have Jocelyn do that, but a member of the board could do it as well. But Jocelyn, go ahead.
Sure. So BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. It's very intentionally calling out that even among communities of color, there are communities that are more at risk in this American society and putting them first. You have an excellent point about individual septics and wastewater. You know, that's one thing that we already have very good connections with water associations around the state, and that was something that we're saving later on for outreach. It was more challenging to do communities of color and to also, you know, find folks in greater Minnesota. I also do want to recognize that, you know, there are water organizations. So I'm trying to look really quick, like Clean River Partners and the Native Nation Red Lake Nation, who also have some of that experience. So we are thinking about them. And that's also the reason why we wanted to stop at 17 and not find the full 25, which we know there's areas that were not covered. And with funding, it will be easier for us to talk to other community organizations that weren't able to in the first round. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And what brought the waste issue to my mind for communities is Mankato has a adequate but quite old central waste processing facility, and to improve it is a $65 million bill. That's a lot of money. There's a lot of political implications to that and a lot of freshwater implications to it. And that's playing out throughout the entire state.
Yes, I mean that there are huge wastewater needs across the state. Jen, I'm going to call on you. We are closing in on our time, and I actually have something I'd like to put before the board. Actually, Jen, if you can wait, Commissioner Huff would, board member and Commissioner Huff would like to speak. Dan, you might be on mute.
Thank you. I had double muted myself. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I would just be remiss to not just point out and to thank Jocelyn, and in your presentation, really focusing on human health at the core of water quality, and especially mental health. Just speaking from the public health perspective, I think that really needs to be at the core as we look at climate change, as we look at changes in how our water systems work and how they are impacted, to really center that in impacts on human health, and as centering human health impacted by mental health. I just want to call that out and say thank you for doing that.
Thank you for that comment. I know that Ms. Catter had her hand up, so I'm going to ask if she wants to add at this point.
I'll keep my comments rather brief, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the comment specifically around wastewater, but also the conversation on mental health and everything else that's been brought up at this point. And one of the reasons, again, and Jocelyn included this in her presentation, but one of the reasons why freshwater was so intrigued by this is the fact that as an organization, we do have a One Water focus, and we do look at the entire ecosystem of how water is interrelated and all the different disciplines that are a part of that conversation as well. And the fact that this plan offers the opportunity for us to talk about infrastructure, to talk about human health, to talk about ecosystems, actual ecosystems, not just the ecosystem of water. So thinking about the all the different opportunities that we have to build connections and relationships and more deeply understand how this is playing out across the states and create those sort of opportunities to catalyze action in addition to the work that the agencies are already doing, but to really take it down to that next level and see what makes sense in that local space. So I want to say thank you on behalf of our team for all the comments and feedback that you shared with us today, and to our continued conversations and partnership going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I would like to, so the other observation I have is there's also value in the process of convening in conversation. And I think it is important to know that like having the demonstration projects and things like that, it will be critical for moving the work forward. But honestly, I think it's an undervalued piece about being able to gather people together to discuss and share perspective, which is sorely needed in our world today to help understand each other's perspective. So thank you. This is very specifically around the water plan, but I think it's helpful. I am wondering if and this was not planned as an action item, but I would be happy to work with Executive Director Pratt and write a letter to the Bush Foundation in support of your application on behalf of the EQB as a partner in this work. And I think that would be appropriate that we could do that at this point. And so I'm just going to look to board members to see if there's any concern about, it would probably be a fairly brief letter, but voicing our support for the plan that's been laid out here and funding that plan. Okay, maybe, yes, Board Member Van Amberg. You might be muted still. I can see that your microphone's muted.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
For my part, I would certainly support sending a letter of support for the Freshwater Institute. I guess one of the biggest worries I have when I look at this is it is a quite a large project and it's budget sensitive, I would think. So anything we can do to help carry this forward, I think would be a good idea, because I really believe that having an NGO do this, as others have said, is very, very helpful beyond state agencies.
All right. I think that I will work with, if no objection arises, I'd like to work with Director Pratt and get that done. My last day, and therefore my last day chairing EQB officially, is March 1st, and I'm just a little bit concerned about the turnover time that will happen here, who will get selected next to be the next board chair. So maybe we can work on that, Executive Director Pratt, and be able to successfully get that over to the Bush Foundation. All right. Members, we're going to move on to our next item. Thank you to the Freshwater Society. Thank you, Jocelyn, for that excellent presentation. You have nothing to worry about. It was well done, and you are very articulate, and you could go before any public body at this point and give a great presentation. And good to see you, Executive Director Link Stein, and the rest of the members of your team. So thanks so much today for being with us.
You're welcome, and thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, we are
so
going to
much.
move. Yes, we are going to move on next to the Environmental Quality Work Plan. And I know Executive Director Pratt would like to introduce this and talk about it. This is the Biennial Work Plan, an important outline of and giving direction to the staff of the EQB in the coming months ahead. So Executive Director Pratt, I'm going to let you take it over from here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I've actually been looking forward to this for the past couple of weeks because I'm excited about this work plan. I'm excited about the work that we're doing with CQB and excited to be able to talk with you more about it today. So I want to present with you the biennial work plan that runs. We're already a little bit into the biennial work plan. The fiscal year started back in July, but we want to take this moment to kind of formally adopt and affirm that we're on the right direction here. And so I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. I'm going to give you some broader context about how we shape this work plan and then walk you through at a high level kind of the line items in the work plan. And then we'll have a good amount of time for questions and conversation at the end of my presentation. So next slide, please. Just a reminder of the mission of EQB. This was a mission that the board, who was seated at the time in 2018, crafted as what they thought was a good way to articulate both our authorities and our charge. And I'll just read it. The mission of the Environmental Quality Board is to enhance Minnesota's environmental quality for current and future generations by leading interagency work to advance meaningful public engagement and facilitate informed decision-making on critical environmental issues. Next slide. So the purpose of putting together this work plan, one is to provide clarity and transparency with you all and with the public of our key work areas. Also to help prioritize what we're working on. We can't work on everything, unfortunately, so prioritizing those key work areas. Right sizing our work to our staff time, which is kind of an ongoing challenge. And I'm going to talk more about that in a couple slides. And then advancing the strategic goals that we have outlined in a strategic plan that is also in your packet. The approach to our work plan is that it's adaptive and flexible. And I'm going to say more about this in a moment as too, but our work is always changing. It's also outcomes driven. So we want to make sure that the work that we're doing really gets us forward progress on critical environmental issues, that the work that we're doing is meaningful and has outcomes that we can point to and that the board feels good about. And then also recognizing EQB's really unique role and platform as a board made up of both members of the public and state agency leaders who bring their agencies' priorities, talent to the table as well. And so we have a really unique platform. And then today, so what I want to do is I want to review the work plan with you. I want to have time for discussion, questions. If you think there's adjustments that need to be made, we can talk about those. And then to formally vote to adopt the work plan. Next slide. I keep forgetting that I'm not in charge of the slides, but EQB at a glance, just to remind you too, as you all know, our board structure is 9 state agency leaders and 8 members of the public, a staff team comprised of an executive director and 7 staff members. Broadly, our authorities are listed there in statute. And then our biennial budget is set at $2.6 million. And if you look at this, the most of the budget, so about 70%, 71% goes towards salary and benefits for our staff. That green box called shared services, those are fees that we pay. We have an administrative relationship with the MPCA. That's where our offices are housed. And so those fees go to office space. They go to shared services such as human resources, IT support, and a variety of other services. And then we have some other fees that go towards Attorney General and other expenses and expenses to do our work. Next slide. Okay, so when we form the work plan, and as staff are looking at this and bringing it before the board, there's really a whole range of inputs that we use to focus that work plan down. First of all, first and foremost, we look at our statutory and rule obligations. What are things we're required to do? We look at legislative initiatives if the legislature has charged us to do something. Certainly board priorities, what you all have expressed as priority work and directed us to do, that is chief among them. Public input, what we've heard from the public through various forums, not just at board meetings, but in a whole host of other conversations that EQB staff are part of. we looked at that 5-year strategic plan that outlines 6 strategic areas. Staff skills and interests, what are we able to do and how are we able to serve this organization, our budget, and then also broadly and the administration's priorities under the Wells-Flanagan administration. So these are some of the major inputs that go into forming our work plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about this work plan scope with you because I think it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around. We as staff, you know, we live and breathe this every day, and so it's kind of second nature to us, but I want to make sure I'm articulating this to the board. So first of all, what you see in the work plan, the document that's in your packet, that represents kind of the key major project areas. Many of these, and I'll point that out when I talk through this, many of these in this biennium are things that have already been underway. They're already things that the board has committed to or that we've are committed to in other ways. So, you know, there's not as much discretion as we might have to just start from scratch with a work plan. The other thing is what's not captured on that work plan document, and we state that on there, is just a lot of organizational work outside of our major project initiatives. And that's everything from running our monthly board meetings to our environmental review technical assistance line. You know, board members, if you're not aware, EQB has a hotline, an environmental review hotline. And so we staff that hotline and take calls every day, really, legislative affairs, communications, and so on. The other thing that's not, you know, kind of captured well on that work plan document is the degree to which EQB, as sort of a hub and a connector, really supports a lot of cross-agency processes and initiatives. And so I listed some of these out here in the blue box on the right side of your screen. So some interagency processes that we support: Minnesota Business First Stop, which is run by DEED, and it's meant to be kind of a place where businesses can come if they're thinking about locating in Minnesota or expanding their business, and they can come to Business First Stop and hear more about what are some of the regulatory requirements and also some of the opportunities in the state. So we staff that. We go to monthly meetings. We bring our tech reps together. These are representatives from each of the agencies. We bring them together on a monthly basis. There's an interagency water coordinating team that we staff. We serve on an enterprise-wide group of community engagement practitioners who are thinking holistically about how the state as an enterprise does a better job of public engagement more broadly. We serve on a number of different climate change sub-cabinet planning teams. And then there's also some external groups. For example, there is a group of Minnesota Tribal Environmental Committee, which is comprised of staff from Minnesota tribal nations, and they meet monthly, and we attend those meetings both to give them updates on our work and also hear feedback from them on concerns they have about EQB's work. So there's a lot more that doesn't appear on that page. And I also want to point out too that what you see in the work plan reflected as our key project areas doesn't mean that EQB staff and board members don't think more broadly about Minnesota's big environmental challenges. I think we take very seriously the charge of the Minnesota Environmental Policy Act to think about those big, complex problems that we face as a state. And so really we come up with more ideas, I think, as a staff and a board than we have time to implement. And that's a good problem to have, because I think we are thinking big picture, what are the tough challenges that Minnesota is facing. I also just thought, you know, it's worth pointing out, this is something I've been talking about with staff. You know, over the last couple of years, there have been some structural changes to EQB. We, for the first time in history, have 8 public board members. So the number of board members has grown. We have currently 2 subcommittees, which, you know, that's been a change, I think, from recent years as well. And so our work is becoming more involved and perhaps more complex as well. And those are good things, and we have to kind of keep up as staff with that. Okay, next slide, please. So I mentioned this adaptive approach, and, you know, just to put a finer point on that, the work at EQB is highly dynamic. there will be issues that come across our desk that we weren't anticipating and might take a whole week of work to address those issues. We might have local units of government or members of the public reaching out to us with an issue, and we do our best to serve those needs and find out where we can get answers for people. So we're often recalibrating week by week where are our priorities, what time do we have. I mentioned that ER hotline. You know, when we have a very busy week on the ER hotline, it impacts many of our other work areas. And so what that means is, even though I'm asking board for you to adopt this work plan today, the reality is that we're gonna, as a board and a staff team, revisit this work plan regularly. For example, there might be changes that come out of this legislative session that would change the way we approach our work plan. And so we will certainly bring it back to you all when we think changes are needed or adjustments are needed. And then likewise, if you have questions that you want to raise, we can bring it back forward at any time. And we're very much open to feedback on this work plan, ideas, or places that you just want to point to as, hey, we need to continue thinking about this and have deeper conversation as the work moves forward. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to move towards walking through the plan in a little bit greater depth. And board members, if you want to follow along, the work plan is on page 6 of your packet. And as a reminder, how it's structured. So we have 6 strategic goals that, again, were identified in a 2018 strategic planning process. And then we've lined up our major work areas according to those 6 strategic goals. So next slide, please. Okay, so our first goal is that EQB fosters innovative policy development. A couple notes about this. So one of the challenges here too is that really many of these strategic goals cross-cut all our work areas. Innovative policy development is one. We are always looking for policy opportunities in really all of our work areas. But 2 of the work items that we want to highlight in this strategic goal are, first is continuing to advance the goals of the state water plan. And the major way that we want to do that is make sure we're coming back to the board every year in a structured way for agencies who are really charged in that water plan with implementing the strategies and actions, and we come back to the board and give a progress report on what progress we've made. Should the proposal that Freshwater just presented to us move forward, that would be very exciting if that were to get funded, and we could add that into our work plan. EQB staff would be available to help support that work, and you know, Freshwater would do a lot of the heavy lifting on the logistics of making that project work, but certainly EQB staff would support where we could. The second area is participating in the climate change subcabinet and supporting strategy development on climate action. This is an area we're charged to do by executive order. We've been sitting on various different committees and planning groups to move this work forward. And you're going to hear more about that, as I mentioned, at the work meeting, at the March meeting. But this is very exciting interagency work. I think it carries forward some of the concerns the board has expressed at various points about the major challenge the state faces on climate change, and that we need to be making action here. I'll note just a couple finer points on this. Faith Krogstad has been doing a lot of work thinking about specifically the engagement aspects of the climate change subcabinet work and showing a lot of leadership there. And I have been, along with some colleagues of mine at DNR, the Department of Health, and at MPCA, have been helping to lead a working group on health and equity related to climate action in the state. So those are some specific ways that EQB has been involved. Okay, moving on to the next strategic goal. This is EQB provides leadership on priority emerging environmental issues. What we do here is just put in a placeholder for any new charges that we might get. For example, if the legislature were to charge us with a particular project that they wanted us to take on, or board, if a particular project were to come before the board that needed staff time and board attention, that's where we would put this in. if we were to have a merging issue land in this kind of placeholder spot, that would be something that we'd have to discuss with the board. How do we maybe recalibrate some of our work areas to allow time to address this emerging issue? Okay, next slide. Excellent. So the environmental review process is transparent, accountable, efficient, and creates a healthy environment and a strong economy. A number of the items in here are, again, kind of work we've already committed to. The Environmental Review Program Improvement Initiative to include climate information. That's the pilot program that you heard about earlier this meeting. The mandatory category report, I'm jumping down here, the mandatory category report, we've already checked that one off the list. And then Environmental Review Program data management and data systems improvement. That is a project we've been working on with IT services to try and create a easier to access database of environmental review that's happening in the state. So this is an ongoing work project, and we're hoping that the IT work gets done on this year, and we can cross this one off the list as well. The second one I want to talk a little bit more about, this is to develop a comprehensive environmental review program, continuous improvement plan. And we've been thinking a lot about staff. Right now, we're working on the initiative related to climate change, but we are aware that there are many other needs for the program to keep it current, effective, and efficient. And some of those feedbacks and concerns have been raised in recent years through rulemaking, through the mandatory category report, feedback that we get from our technical assistance calls, feedback we get at board meetings. We're having good conversations right now with the Minnesota Tribal Environmental Committee about how the program could better meet the needs of tribal nations. And then past efforts such as an environmental review advisory panel from 2017 to 2018 that looked at program changes. So out of that feedback, we're aware of a whole host of things we could work on related to environmental review. And what we want to do is work with the board to set a strategic way to approach those and you know, make some deliberate choices about what we tackle and what we don't, and what we want to prioritize and what we don't. There's more work that we could do to address the needs and concerns that we've heard about. And that would be something, the timeline with that would be we're starting to kind of get our hands around it now, and it would be a conversation we begin to have with the board later in the year, the board and ERIS. Okay, next slide. Okay, the next goal is that Minnesotans are engaged in policy conversations and diverse and underrepresented groups are actively included. Again, I'll note here that that engagement is something that runs through all of our program areas, whether we're working on the water plan or climate and environmental review. We're looking at how do we make sure we're hearing from diverse people in these processes. We don't always hit the mark, and there's a lot of room for improvement, but we really try to bake this into everything we do at EQB. And so the projects that we have listed here are just additional forums that we think really bring this this goal area forward. The things we're looking towards is hosting the Environmental Congress, potentially in 2023, facilitating the Emerging Leaders Initiative. We do think that there are some needs around updating our website and some of our virtual tools, so improving public participation that way. And then also revisiting our environment and energy report card, which we've produced in the past. We've done 2 iterations of it, and we think it's time to look at that again and talk to the board about whether we want to continue doing that report, and if so, in what form would we do it. One thing I just want to note, I have this big plus sign on this slide. We've been beginning to brainstorm as staff some, I think, really exciting potential opportunities for 2023 to think about aligning some of the engagement activities I just talked about with the 50-year anniversary of the Minnesota Environmental Policy Act. That's a pretty significant milestone for our state and a significant milestone for EQB. And so I think it would be really exciting to potentially use that as a framework to hear from Minnesotans. Conversations that we have related to 50 years and related to hearing from Minnesotans could also be used to update EQB's strategic plan, which we will, we called it a 5-year strategic plan, so it will need a refresh as well. Okay, next slide. So EQB is a trusted partner with state agencies in the collaborative work of enhancing Minnesota's long-term environmental quality, developing the 404 assumption study, which we were charged to do by the legislature. As you all know, we completed that work objective. And then supporting the interagency policy protection efforts and lead related public engagement. The interagency pollinator team is working on, they're continuing to evolve in their thinking and how they become most effective, and they're looking forward to sharing some new pathways that they're taking with you this year. One of which being they're starting to work on an action plan so that we can more clearly communicate to Minnesotans what are the needs related to pollinators and what are the next steps that Minnesota as a state needs to take. And then finally, EQB provides support to local governments. We do this certainly through the environmental review program. I'm also excited to share that we're able to serve on the steering committee for the Green Step program. We had done that in the past, but we had a gap where we had some staff turnover, but we are again sitting on that steering committee. And for folks who don't know, aren't familiar with the Green Step program, it is a reward and recognition, a voluntary program for local units of government who want to take a step towards sustainability in their communities. And the program supports those efforts and initiatives and provides recognition when they meet sustainability milestones. And that program is run by MPCA along with a lot of other partners, and EQB is at the table in those partnerships. Next slide. Okay, so I ran through all that at a pretty high level, but I want to open the conversation with you all. What opportunities do you see in this work plan? What questions or concerns do you have? And what would you like your fellow board members and staff to keep in mind as this work moves forward? So we'll take down the slides. We'll put those discussion questions into the chat, or feel free to comment on anything else, and we can open it up for conversation, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, thank you, Executive Director Pratt. And I am both looking at whether members have their hands up or they're looking in another way for recognition. Yasmin just put in the chat the questions. Commissioner Kessler. Whoop, you are muted. You got the hand raise, but not the mute. Okay, looks like you have to go get a headset or some way of coming off of mute. So
sorry, Chair Anderson Kelleher, I have two things I need to make happen in order to speak. I was just going to say, first of all, I found the raise your hand thing, but I appreciate the breadth of this. And Executive Director Pratt, this is ambitious, and it's helpful to have people like Freshwater wanting to lean in to help the collective we make progress in some of these areas. I will call out that we at the Pollution Control Agency have had all of the tribal consultations now over the last year, and environmental review has come up in every single one. And a desire on the part of our tribal leaders and the tribal partners to have this reflect their voices and just have themselves see themselves in this work. And I don't think they feel that way right now, and at least based on the conversations we've had. And so I appreciate that others can hear that, and that as we think about the work of this board going forward, there may be opportunities to incorporate that work and that intentional engagement and just revisioning with them.
thank you for that. I don't know if I'm just going to hold that for a second and see if others have comments right now.
Maybe I can respond and just clarify.
Sure.
So Commissioner Kessler, and you're referring particularly to the conversations around environmental review, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and we're hearing the same thing, and I think that's exactly the type of thing we want to raise with the board is, we hear a lot of different needs about changes people would like to see to the environmental review program, and they're all good. We look at these as staff. There are a lot of great things and a lot of great updates we could make to an environmental review program that is now 50 years old. And so what do we spend the time on, and making those deliberate decisions with the board about what things are we not going to work on? I think that's the harder decision, right? What things are we not going to work on first? And so we want to make those decisions along with the board. And I think that, our hearing from our tribal nations, I think they have really good points about ways that we need to take their concerns more seriously.
Okay, thank you for the response as well. I'm just going to pause. This is an action item of the board. And I am not seeing further board comment on the item. So I think that I'll just speak slowly as I put Faith on notice that I'm going to have her call the roll on the work plan, the EQB work plan, fiscal year 2022 to 2023. You can find that, of course, starting on page 6 of the board packet, and then the resolution is on page 12. All right, Faith, would you mind calling the roll on the resolution to adopt the EQB work plan?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. First, we have Chair Anderson Kelleher.
Aye.
Board Member Arnold.
Aye.
Board Member Forsberg.
Aye.
Board Member Gehring.
Aye.
Board Member Kessler.
Aye.
Board Member Konar Steenberg.
Aye.
Board Member Martin.
Aye.
Board Member Nelson.
Aye.
Board Member Roberts Davis. Board Member Roberts Davis. We'll come back. Board Member Stroman.
Aye.
Board Member Van Amberg.
Yes.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Van Amberg. Board Member Yowaki.
Aye.
All right, that is 11 votes in favor.
So board members will excuse the board members who are not present for the vote today, and the EQB work plan for fiscal year 22-23 is adopted on an 11-0 vote. Thank you for passing that resolution. All right, excellent. Well, we are rolling along here in our agenda, and I think we next are up to public comment. And I don't know, has anyone sought public comment, members of EQB staff?
No, Chair Anderson Kelleher, there are no public commenters at this time.
Okay. We will call for that one more time before the end of the meeting, just in case someone, and can you remind people how, if they're going to comment on today's agenda items, how they would do that?
I can jump in, Madam Chair. Members of the public, if you do wish to make public comment, use the raise hand feature. You have to find your way to the participants list in the lower right-hand part of your screen, find your name, and then raise your hand there.
Okay, awesome. I think we'll have you hold that up for just a second. Board Member Forsberg. You're not a member of the public, but I see your hand is up. Maybe that it could be as we call them at MnDOT, that could be a relic of a past hand, but maybe it's new.
Well, at my age, the relic is probably most appropriate, Chair.
Now.
When you look at the work plan, you see some process-oriented items, such as how environmental review is handled and so on. And then we've had specific environmental issue items, like the pollinator work that was done. And following environmental news, the big ones that I've seen in the state are pipelines, industrial scale farming, mining, and water quality. Those are all big issues. We're not directly dealing with those as far as specific projects goes, and I understand why. They're huge issues and the limitation of staff. But I think it's something that we could study, we could discuss at a future strategic planning meeting. Do we want to enter into those, and how would we work with our fellow agencies to do that? Just a comment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Board Member Forsberg. Okay. I think we'll take down the how to raise your hand in WebEx screen at this point. And what we'd like to do before we close, and we will call for public comment one more time, just in case someone has added in or would like to say something further. But we have a number of board members who are terming off at this point, and I'm not sure they are all with us. I know that Board Member Ide Tollefson could not be with us today, and I think the board would like to invite her back at a future date to say a few words about her service on the EQB. I know that Board Member Murdoch is also terming off. I don't see him listed, but I could be missing something. Executive Director Pratt, are my eyes fooling me somewhere?
We don't, I did expect him, but I don't see him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that leaves, for a few comments, it leaves Board Member Garing and myself. This will be my last meeting on the EQB as Commissioner of Transportation. And I want to first say, I could not have foreseen 3 years ago when by statute I became a board of the EQB that I'd be chairing the EQB by the end of these 3 years. I really, more than my own reflections on the process of the EQB, I want to lift up a couple of things that we have done together that I think were particularly meaningful and impactful on both the service on the board and hearing from the public. So first, I really appreciated how we started this term by hearing from some of the original authors of the Environmental Quality Board statute and those who were involved in the early years of the EQB. I think it was very grounding to have that, and I want to thank the staff, and I know that former Commissioner Bishop was very involved in making that happen. And so I hope that future terms of the EQB can also include that sort of both learning and, I am a student of history, and so I love to hear the history of the vision that started this and where we are today. So I think that was great. The Environmental Congress was really a wonderful experience. We were down at Minnesota State Mankato for that and really appreciated all of the numbers of people who came out, and particularly young people who came out to talk to us about what they wanted to see in future work of, I think, the entire state, but of course EQB was central to that meeting. And I know that many of us have held up the meeting that we had in southeastern Minnesota when we were considering the generic EIS process question and how meaningful that was. And I think that we can never know, we'll never be able to redo this period of time during COVID, but it has definitely diminished our ability to talk directly with the public. There's some very good things about what we've adapted to, but I hope for all of you that some of that more regular in-person interaction gets to return to the schedule this year. So those are things that I really want to hold up as highlights of this 3-year period for myself. I also just have to say this staff is amazing. Executive Director Pratt and the rest of the EQB staff. As I mentioned, I think that because they are so high functioning together, they do such a good job with all of us. We forget how small the EQB is. They definitely are punching above their weight class in terms of how they show up and how they do their work. And I just want to say a great appreciation. It makes it look easy, but in fact, they do a lot of work behind the scenes to get us to these monthly meetings and to also respond to a number of things that come in between. So my praise is mostly for them, and really appreciate all of you serving on the EQB as well. And so I'm going to see if Julie would like to say a few words. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I did see you came on camera for a bit, so I think you might want to say a few words about your term of service.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Basically everything you said, that's pretty much what I was going to say, except I have been here a lot longer than you. I've been on the board. And so I was around when there was very limited staff, and it was basically borrowed staff from the Department of Ag. And so just watching all of the things that have been happening the last few years with a full staff, and I mean, all of the public outreach, and I mean, just that is just great to watch it grow and to, just flourish. And unfortunately, these last couple of years, yeah, I wish I really enjoyed going to the meetings and talking with people and getting to know the commissioners and telling them about the issues in Northwest Minnesota. So I do miss that part, which we can't help, and hopefully things will get back to normal. But yes, that's the part I can definitely say is having a great staff and all of the things that have been done in the last few years compared to years ago when they were almost going to disappear. So I have appreciated all my time working with the staff, and every time I had a question or wanted them to present or do anything in Northwest Minnesota, it was never a problem. They always said yes. So thank you very much. It's been fun.
Well, thank you for your service. I occasionally have had people reach out to me about service on the EQB, and I always ask them some questions about what their goals are, because this is a very, this is a working board. This is not a board that can just meet and not pay attention to their packets. So I want to thank you for all of your service and good work, especially members of the public. It is a big commitment. So I just want to say thank you again for what you sign up for in terms of serving on the EQB. All right, let's see. Do we have any public commenters? Otherwise, I'll just, yes.
Yeah, I can't let you board members term off without a few words from me. So, I just wanted to say, saying goodbye to board members is a little bit like losing a family member, because we think about you really every day that we're doing our work, and how is our board going to respond, and what's important to them, and what are they thinking about, and how does this matter to their communities and their agencies. And so we really do hold you dear to our work, and the energy, the enthusiasm that you bring is the wind at our sails. And that's why we're able to punch above our weight and do the work we do, because we want to show up to you all and do a great job. So, that inspires us. I do have to say a couple of personal things, board member Gearing, it's just, I just so much appreciated, one thing I particularly appreciated about your service on the board, besides your kind of long institutional history of where the board has gone and what we've done, but also just really bringing your regional focus to the board. Board members, I will call Julie up and I'll hear about what is going on in her area and the challenging water initiatives that they have, the cross-jurisdictional water issues, her connection to the Red Board. Those have been really informative to the board's work, and she's just done a really excellent job of, helping staff see those pictures and see what's going on in that region. And so to the other public members too, we really rely on your kind of regional expertise. And then to Chair Anderson Kelleher, just an appreciation that you were able to jump into the chair role and came in at such a kind of busy time. And, I know that commissioners have so much on their plate besides attending EQB meetings. And so I always appreciate the additional time that you spend and devote to EQB initiatives. Is really important. So there will be some form of a little, I can't get of a little plaque that comes your way. You can't do anything in state government without a plaque. So that'll be coming your way. And we didn't get a chance to hear from board member Murdoch or Ivy Collison today, but we will bring them back and give them a chance to share some of their thoughts from the board too. So with that, I will be quiet.
Okay, well, thank you. And that was very kind comments, Katie, really appreciate them. All right, members, I think that we are actually going to get you an entire hour back in your schedule today, which is kind of amazing. I think it's hard sometimes when we're scheduled for a certain amount of time. People often want to use the entire amount of time, but I do believe that we all could use that time in our life. And whether it's work or getting out for a quick walk or stretch before you do your next thing, really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for your good participation. And in my new role, I am actually still going to be, I'm sure, involved with the EQB in the city of Minneapolis, and I actually look forward to being at a different level of government, a level of government I have not served in. So I'm excited about this journey into local government and look forward to seeing many of you in that role. So members, I do not see a sign for public comment, and I also am just going to say that I think we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.